Don't Worry, Speed Racer is the 13th episode of the 4th season of Two and a Half Men. This is directed by Gary Halvorson, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. It's a pretty decent episode, but it's a bit uncomfortable at times, mostly because of Jake. I feel like Jake is getting older, but I still see him as being a kid. So some of the conversation's a bit uncomfortable, but in general, it's a good episode. It actually starts off with Jake asking, how smart do you have to be to have sex? And basically, we eventually get the story that obviously Judith is dating a doctor. She's dating Dr. Melnick, and Jake hears them at night. But Judith has to keep giving him instructions. So Jake thinks, how smart can he actually be if he needs to get instructions? Or how smart do you need to be to have sex if somebody who is a doctor still needs instructions? And we have a pretty interesting conversation. And the next scene is very funny because Alan is taking Jake home after the weekend and he's got him a box of banana cream pie because he was trying to use banana cream pie as an analogy. Well, not kind of an analogy for sex, but it was intertwined with that conversation. And he gives him the pie because it was the easier option than trying to explain things. And Alan tells Judith that Jake can hear them at night. And Judith is mortified, but Alan thinks it's funny that Judith gives him instructions. And when Alan says to her, I've been in your position, he replies, without missing a beat, well, she only likes the one. And I love the fact that even though obviously Alan is divorced from Judith is now with Herb, I like the fact that Herb and Alan seem to be on the same kind of level, and they do have this kind of small moments of bonding every now and then, a moment of understanding between them, which I rather like. We're then back at the house, and Charlie does an impression of a melon with a face on that was belonging to Alan, and his impression made me laugh. I rather liked it. And then Evelyn comes in, and I feel like it's been a while since we had a proper Evelyn-focused episode. It probably hasn't been that long, but it was nice to see Evelyn again. I think she was in the last episode, but again, not for too long. But she's showing around Hiroshi. He's played by Sab Shimono. Basically, it's a scam. And Alan doesn't quite realise it's a scam. He thinks Evelyn is actually showing Charlie's house around to sell it, and Alan asks, do I have to find another place to live? And without missing anything, Charlie says, yes. Me saying that, not very funny, but in the moment, very entertaining. And Evelyn suggests that Charlie must have forgotten something that he saw when he was a child. They're talking about Jake hearing Judith and Herb. And before Evelyn has a chance to say anything else, she leaves with Hiroshi. What has Charlie forgotten? It's quite suspenseful, because in the next scene, Charlie is in bed and he wakes up. And after a couple of seconds, he bolts upright. And all he says is, I remember. So sinister. And he goes and tells Alan, and he talks about it, and it's about this time that he saw somebody on the waterbed with Evelyn, and it was a really scarring experience. It's a really detailed story, and I thought they did a really good job with it. After that story is over, we then have a scene that definitely felt awkward, where Jake is in his bedroom, and we can hear Judith and Herb in their room, not doing anything too crazy, but Jake stands up, knocks on their wall, tells them he's still awake, and then goes to eat pie. And it just seems like a really awkward scene. We're then on the deck with Rose and Charlie. And things start to come back to Charlie. And that must be a really scary thing. But it also made me think, what if I ever have repressed anything? Because Charlie asks Rose if she's ever repressed anything. And she said that she can't remember, which makes perfect sense. How would you know you've suppressed something? Because that's the whole point of suppressing it. And that's really scary to think about. That any of us could have a suppressed memory and we wouldn't know it until it came back. And that is absolutely terrifying. So it was kind of a scary scene. I don't think it was meant to be scary, but it certainly made me think. Herb then drops Jake off so he and Judith can have sex. Again, I don't really love that. Obviously, I'm not saying they shouldn't do that, but I don't think Jake should be aware of why that's happening. But nevertheless, Jake is aware. Jake doesn't seem to be too bothered by it, but time will tell whether he gets traumatized by this. And Charlie goes to see Evelyn, and Evelyn says she doesn't want to see him. She's busy. So Charlie decides it would be a good idea to climb up to the window to view her bedroom, which seems like a terrible idea. And of course, she's in bed with Hiroshi. And Charlie goes back home, and the last thing we see is Charlie watching Yosemite Sam on television. This refers back to his story about seeing somebody with the red mustache. And it was an interesting, certainly very different way to end things. It's not a bad episode, but there are definitely a couple of moments that feel a little uncomfortable surrounding Jake. But other than that, I liked it. Not too bad, not an all-time favourite, but apart from a few small things here and there, I thought Don't Worry Speed Racer was ultimately a pretty good episode.